The Oklahoma City Thunder got a big win over the Denver Nuggets on primetime ABC. This game showed the Thunder's championship mentality. It also could have stamped SGA's MVP case. We'll talk about it all on today's show.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder getting a big win over the Denver Nuggets. It was the showcase game. It was the game everybody was watching, and the Thunder got a big win, 127-103, as SGA out-duels Jokic in a classic MVP battle, a game that the Thunder showed their championship mentality, and as much as it was a game about Shai, it was a game about the team as well. So we'll talk about all of that on today's show, brought to you by FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. This game had everything at stake, it felt like. This felt like one of the biggest regular season games in the Paycom Center in recent memory. I mean, it's ABC, which is the marquee spot to be in. It's the number one versus number two in the West. It's number one versus number two in the MVP, the tightest MVP race that we've seen. Russell Westbrook returning to OKC still gets a standing ovation to this day in Oklahoma City, and all the parallels that go along with this new era crossing over against someone who helped build the first era of Thunder basketball. And it was just an electric factory in this game, but it was a win that was, I think, the game that if you had any reservations about this Thunder team, they should be thrown out the window. Because look, I get it. I myself have grappled with what to do with this Thunder team. Because the course of NBA history tells us you've got to get your scars. You got to go through the losses. You've got to take your lumps. The history of the NBA tells us that the standard in your second ever playoff run shouldn't be to go win the NBA championship. That's what the history suggests. And while history is important in life and basketball, what's more important is what's happening right in front of us. And what's happening right in front of us is this Thunder team is the best in the Western Conference. This Thunder team is one of the best in basketball. They should be in the NBA Finals. They should have a strong chance to win the NBA Finals. And so in grappling with how to evaluate properly the expectation level for this team, I think that the only context that remains is this. If this Thunder team falls short of the NBA Finals, it is a disappointment. It is a disappointment for this team not to win the West. Now, hone in on the word disappointment, because there's a ocean-like gap between disappointment and disaster. It's not a disaster, no matter what happens this year. But it would be disappointing because what you saw tonight or this afternoon was a championship team in Oklahoma City. What you saw tonight was a team that has all the bones of a title team. They have one of the best coaches in the sport. They have the best or the second best player, however you want to push through that, in SGA. And they have championship depth, and that was part of the difference of this game. But another thing that stuck out tonight is that if I stripped away the resumes, if I stripped away what each team has done in the past, if I stripped away how many years of experience each team has, if I stripped away that one coach has won a title and one hasn't, if you watch that game blind of those facts, you would have thought that the Thunder were the team that had championship pedigree, were the team that had a championship coach. Because in a game like this that was tight for 40 minutes until the Thunder ran away with it, the Thunder were the looser team. The Thunder were the more composed team. The Thunder were the team who made the breaks. And the Thunder were the team that handled adversity the best. Every missed call, the Nuggets are wailing on the floor instead of going and playing defense. Their coach gets a technical foul. Their players who have hit big shots in bigger moments than this were more tense than the Thunder. And the Thunder, again, were just the more composed team. And one of the stark differences of this game compared to games we've seen even this season, but much less last season, was the Thunder's ability to power through a slow start that got them down 11 points in the first quarter. I mean, that 10-0 run, you can look at that and say, here we go again. You think back to the Milwaukee Bucks NBA Cup game, and it just shows you how far, along this Thunder team has came. It shows you how long this season is. Because when that Bucks game happened, the NBA Cup that doesn't count for anything, it's no more important than an exhibition game right now. When that game happened and the Thunder were clanking shots, the Thunder looked tight, the Thunder, looked like the pressure of the game got to them. That's a far cry from what they look like today. When they got down 11, they were able to adjust. They were able to put that in the rear view and keep stacking possessions, get over that hump, and stay there. I mean, once they finally cleared that hurdle, there ends up only being 3 lead changes and 4 ties. They get down 11. They get the game within 1 at the end of the first. Then the Thunder lead by 1 at the end of the second. Then the Thunder lead by 3 by the end of the third. And then the avalanche happened. And this adds to it the Thunder's championship DNA. So they have the star that it takes to win a title. You cannot win a title without a star. They have a coach that I think everybody should trust, the reigning coach of the year. And you can't win a title without a good coach unless a billion factors go your way. And they have the identity. When games get tight, when games get muddy, when games get murky, as this one was the entire night, because the scoreboard at the end of the day won't reflect it, but anyone who watched that game knew, these two teams kept everything within the margins for the majority of this game. But then the avalanche hit. And the Thunder's version of an avalanche is just stacking stops. So it's not as pretty as like the Warriors version of an avalanche where they're bombing threes and in the blink of an eye, you're down by 20, but it's the exact same result. The Thunder get a lot of credit for their net rating and a lot of credit for their margin of victory, and they should. But there's been a lot of games like this where it's been tight until it's not, and that's what great teams do. That's what great teams have done through the history of this league. So, this first segment, a little bit all over the place, and we're going to get the car back on the road, but this game deserves an off-script podcast for you. It boils down to the Thunder have a championship DNA. The Thunder are good enough to go to the NBA Finals, and they should. And in this game, they had an opportunity to show and display and implement the lessons that they've learned in other big games, and they did that, despite the slow start. And this game, I mean, neither team shot well from 3. This was not a good shooting night for either squad, and each team missed open looks and looks that the other wants to have back. As Denver shoots 30% from 3 and OKC shoots 34% from 3. OKC shot 49% from the floor. Denver shot 41%. And the biggest difference, Denver only made 55% of their free throws. But the physicality defensively was huge for the Thunder. The ability to rack up stops was big. The ability to understand schematically who you want to funnel shots to was big. I think Russell Westbrook missed another shot just now. I think he just clanked one again. And it all stacked onto itself to add up to this win. And you've also got one of the best drivers in the sport, both literally and figuratively, in SGA, who might have stamped his MVP case with his performance. We'll talk about that coming up. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at DoorDash. Go check out DoorDash today. DoorDash is awesome because NBA fans, get ready. When they swish, you save thanks to Dash Pass. Every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score with a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more points during a game in the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off of an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Game day feasts are available for you. Like if you go and watch that 50-point game and then you do it again the next night because you're watching basketball every single night, you can celebrate with an order of wings for dinner. Or if you stayed up too late and that 50-point ball maybe came on a West Coast game and you forgot to pack your lunch the next day, guess what? Quick and easy delivery for your lunch. So sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more points in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off of an order the next day, up to $10 off, just by using promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating locations. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms and conditions apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. SGA was sensational tonight. And I know it didn't look all too familiar because the efficiency was only 47% from the floor. And his three was 2 for 11, which was 18%, which is a large chunk of why his efficiency dipped below making half his shots like he typically does. But he had 40 points on 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks against just 1 turnover, and was a plus 11 in this game with 35 minutes on the floor. You know, I thought Shai did a really good job of being more aggressive, right? Looking to initiate more for himself without, you know, stepping over that boundary. Because there's a fine line in a star player being aggressive and a star player being a ball hog. I thought he walked that line extremely well and was a perfectly aggressive player who still got his teammates involved, but also still was able to take advantage of, you know, the Nuggets, where you see the high pick and roll stuff really move the Nuggets defense, where he was able to attack the crease and get to the back end, able to walk to the rim more than a few times in this game. You also saw that 3-point shot, which he was only 2 for 11 tonight. And like on the surface level, that does not look good. However, it's the accumulation of, one, he was still willing to shoot 11 threes tonight after starting 0 for 6 or 0 for 5, whatever it was. 2, since February, he shot 42% from 3. So like the scouting report is ever updating on Shai as a not only willing shooter, but a good shooter over this last stretch. And 3, building up this muscle has now changed and tilted the way defenses can guard him. Because before, you're really worried about the mid-range, you're really worried about the rim, so your pickup point on Shai of when do I try to press, or where do I start to position myself where I'm guarding Shai, was typically around the elbow, around the nail. So somewhere on that line there, you're going to pick up Shai. But when he can shoot the 3 like this, right, career high 3-point percentage heading into tonight, obviously the 2 for 11 will probably change that, but a career high from 3 and on more attempts and the stats from February, you know, that forced Jamal Murray to fly by Shai. And look, you know, the addition of that gets Shai, just by being a little bit better and a little bit more willing to shoot the 3, it nets you in the end an easy 2. And so you can see how these departments and compartments of his game can start to complement one another. Where we know that Shai's at his best at the rim. We know that Shai's exceptional in the mid-range. He's the best mid-range scorer in this league. And now that he has that element of a 3-point shot, well, where do you pick him up? Because if you pick him up too high or fly by him like Murray did, you're giving him his best two traits, which is in the rim, or at the rim, and in the mid range, depending on how your back line adjusts to it once you fly by or pick him up too high. If you sag off of him, well, yeah, he went 2 for 11 tonight, but he's also had 4-3 nights, right? Like he's also had these 3-point barrages. So you don't just want to give it to him. You still want to make life tough on him. And so he's then puts you in a pretzel that makes him unguardable, frankly. League leading in scoring. This is his third straight game of 40 or more points. It's impressive. It's impressive. The 3 blocks was impressive. I get that the Thunder have an incredible lineup of, a Rolodex of defenders. I do. If you take in, right, if you swapped out Shai for a guard who can score to the degree Shai can score, offensive engine type, but can't play a lick of defense, the Thunder's team defense suffers. You're trying to then hide Shai defensively, whereas right now, teams aren't picking on Shai because they think he's a terrible defender, but it's a pick your poison situation where it's like, well, this is still not a great matchup, but it's the best of the worst options on the floor. For the offensive standpoint, the best of the worst options to come guard you, and Shai stands up, and that's because of his elite motor. And the thing is, it's really hard to quantify like motor and effort level and defense, especially for most people who don't go back and watch these games and see how impactful that Shai is, even whenever he's not the point of attack defender. But what Shai can do on both ends of the floor is stuff that you don't have a lot of in this league. You don't have a lot of guys who can go on a run of 3 straight 40-point plus games and give you exceptional defense that should land you on an all-defensive team. You just don't. But that's not as sexy as a triple-double, right? And look, should this game stamp Shai's MVP case? I think that's not fair to say. Because you have to admit on the front end, had Jokic had an exceptional game, you would not have wanted, him, as he has a near triple-double. He still played good despite the elbow injury. But like had Jokic just like far and away done something impressive today and like dominating today, you would not have liked it if people said that changed things for Jokic. So we don't want to view this on any level for Shai or against Shai or for anybody in the MVP race on a 1-game sample. But it is a measuring stick. It is a litmus test. It is a data point. Right or wrong, this game matters. Right or wrong, this game will influence people. You want to know how we know this? Because Tim Bontemps, who I love, puts together the MVP straw poll where he's polling not just schlups like me. He's polling actual voters. He's not polling me. He's polling actual voters who will decide this award. And they admitted that the NBA Cup final against the Bucks flipped some votes, right? So this game did matter. And Shai played exceptional in it. But it's the consistency of what Shai does. Shai does this every single night. Every single night Shai does this. So did he stamp his MVP case? I think he did. But not because he had 44 points, 40 points. Because he's been this great the whole season. Because he's gotten the Thunder to this point. Because he's got the Thunder as far up on the number 2 seed in the West, which we all think the West is this big, bad conference, right? We all crown the West as, oh my goodness, if only we played out East, it'd be a lot easier. So we think the West is great. Yes, no, any objections or forever hold your peace? We think the West is great. And Shai has driven this Thunder team that for a large chunk of this season has missed its top 3 player in Chet Holmgren. I'd put him 2. Don't care if you put him 3. Who cares? Top 3 player in Chet. For the majority of this season, he has not had Chet with him. Not to mention the laundry list of other injuries that have happened to him. And not to mention it still, as much as you don't want to hear it, one of the youngest rosters in the NBA. This team has distanced itself from the 2 seed as much as the 2 seed has distanced itself from the 11 seed in the Big Bad West, right? The Big Bad West sees a wider gap or as wide of a gap in its number 1 and 2 seed as it does seeds 2 through 11. Now, that's not a knock on the Western Conference, because I agree. The West is way more viable, way more ferocious than the East. That's an illustration of how dominant this Thunder team has been. You can't, on one hand, say, oh my gosh, the West is a bloodbath. The West is the best conference. And then when a guy is taking on that conference and thoroughly dominating at 53-11, say, yeah, he's winning, but like, what's it really mean? Oh, I don't know. For the history of the award, it's meant everything. For the history of the MVP race, winning has been a top priority. You want to know how we know this? Whenever you didn't reward winning and gave the MVP to Russell Westbrook for averaging a triple-double, people were ready to bear arms. So, there is examples of winning not being the only thing, but they're very few and far between. Especially when the measurement is this close. Especially when the feats are this close. So did Shai stamp his MVP case today? I think that it's a big feather in his cap, but it's a just kind of addition to his already MVP-worthy resume. I think it'd be unfair to either party to say that it was won today, because they've both been excellent all season long. Shai was great. This whole team was great for OKC. We'll talk about how it was a team win and what to look forward to in the rematch tomorrow night. Finally, back in the nighttime as a night owl. We'll talk about all that coming up. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel today, because March Madness is here. FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets on your first $5 bet if it wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even guessing who's cutting the nets down. So go check it out today at FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops and NBA action all tournament and season long. That's your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets, and we can go peruse the FanDuel lines right this second at FanDuel.com right now as you look ahead to tomorrow. The Thunder, 9-point favorites over the Denver Nuggets on the second night of a back-to-back. Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. So I think that, Shai should win the MVP award. I also think it's a very nuanced conversation that people don't want to have, right? They just want to fight for their guy, and that's it. They want to fight for their narrative, or that's it. Listen, if I had a vote, I would vote for Shai. With that being said, when the NBA puts out their list of all their voters and whom they voted for, you're not going to catch any heat in my book if you vote for Jokic. Because Jokic has been Paul Bunyan-esque. If we did not have video evidence for the stuff that Jokic is doing, he would be Wilt Chamberlain in 20 years. Nobody would believe it. Nobody would believe that he could pull this off. So I think Jokic is worthy. I think that when the race is this close, though, there are certain tiebreakers that I personally value. Perhaps you don't value them, and that's well within your right as a voter. With that being said, I would still vote for Shai. Jokic tonight, I think, does deserve better than what many non-Denver people gave him today. There was a lot of complaining or a lot of criticism for apparently, I was at the arena, so I didn't know what the broadcast was saying. But what I gather is the broadcast kept talking about his elbow injury during the game. Yeah, let me tell you, being in the arena and not getting to see any replays of how it happened, but just looking at it live, whenever he had that injury, I thought, well, I don't know if it's smart to keep playing him in this game. But he battled through it. He gutted through it. He played 41 minutes. He got you 24 points, 13 boards, 9 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks, and went 2 for 10 from 3, which was kind of the biggest indicator that something was, in fact, wrong from that spell. Whenever he was shortchanging threes, this is a guy who's been exceptional from beyond the arc. He was legitimately hurt. And if it was your guy who was banged up, knock on wood, you'd want that same courtesy to be felt. And the thing about the broadcast is you have to understand how the sausage is made a little bit. Look, you're locked in for 48 minutes. This was a nationally televised game. This was a game that started at noon. There's plenty of casual NBA fans who can't build a Sunday around the noon slate. They're tuning in the third quarter and they're wondering, man, why does Jokic look so off? Well, because early in the game, whenever you were having lunch, he got injured. So I do think that Jokic deserves credit for the way that he played, even though it wasn't like a jaw-dropping game, and it wasn't even a Jokic standard game. He does deserve credit for really battling it out and playing the 41 minutes and logging what he logged in a -13 effort. But overall, I thought that this game was won by the Thunder, one on the back of Shai, but also on the back of this entire team. It was a team win, and it showed you the luxury of the depth and the development of the Thunder. Because everyone contributed in this game. J-Will was incredible. Like, J-Will had 9 points, 5 rebounds, and assists, 3 for 5 from 3. This is another game where he had multiple threes. And the defense on Jokic today, listen, Jokic is a player that is in that unguardable tier. So, good defense on Jokic just grading with a curve, but the defense was there today from J-Will. And the defense has been much improved over these last couple of weeks. And I would love to talk about this with someone in the know, and we'll ask him once we get the chance to. But just watching him, watching it live, and I go back and watch the games the next morning. So the next morning when I watch it, I try to figure out the why, right? Like when you watch it live, you get the how, but how do you know why it happened? So watching him and how he's improved defensively, one, it's been a lot of positioning, like his positioning and ability to play drop. And even tonight, right? He played drop coverage on Jokic, and then Jokic got into the paint. Jokic dishes it off to Russ. The quick twitch of his hips, flipped his hips over, got to the other side of the lane, contested Russ, forced a miss, and Jokic gets a putback. So he forced a miss on Russ, and it was a really athletic play for J-Will. Like, that's improved. Like, the explosiveness, the athleticism's improved a little bit for J-Will. I think that what's also helped him is the understanding that, and this is a complete guess, but when I watch him now compared to before in his NBA career, what's the difference in how he's contesting at the rim recently? It just looks like a guy who understands that he's 6'9". He's not a center, but he's being played as a center his whole NBA career. And so how do you use your leverage to your advantage versus you can wall up at the rim as much as you want to, right? Stay planted and throw your arms up. 6'9" wall up is different than a true center walling up. So how do you time your jumps? How do you use your leverage? How do you do the things that have made other small ball lineups like Kenrich and J-Dub effective? And I think that he's implemented some of that. And that's just a complete guess from a million miles away, like the bird's eye view of watching the games over and over and over again with my untrained eye. I like to think it's trained, but of course not trained to the level of the Thunder and their coaching staff. But that's just kind of what it appears like to me. And J-Will deserves a lot of credit for his improvement. And then you go down the list of Cason Wallace's defense was massive. Caruso had 8 points, but his 1-3 was a timely 3. It was a retaliation. It was an answer to Russell Westbrook's 1-3, which if you have an empty possession after that Russ 3 and Denver goes and scores, those are the things that shift momentum. Those are the things that turn the tide in the game that, while it looks lopsided, was really not. It really was not a lopsided game. And I thought that the Thunder were really disciplined in who they were. They didn't let that 10-0 run change them. They didn't let that 10-0 run rattle them. They stayed true to who they were. They fought through some adversity. And eventually, talent and a good scheme, good game plan wins. They have the talent. And look at what they did to Denver. I mean, yes, Russ, shoot as much as you want to. He was 1 for 9. Every player on the bench, shoot as much as you want to. And if you're not shooting, right, how can we give them open opportunities that really boggle down the offense if they don't want to shoot? So the Thunder defense was really exceptional in this game. And then you get to Chet and J-Dub and Hartenstein. For one, let's just get Hartenstein out of the way real quick. Hartenstein will never get to do for this game casually as he should, because 10 and 11 is good. It's not going to jump out at anybody who didn't watch the game. There is no better person to pair with Chet Holmgren in a Jokic matchup than Hartenstein, because Hartenstein was able to get into Jokic's body, play very physical with him, and then you have Chet in this roaming role to add even more rim pressure. Hartenstein did his job phenomenally. Hartenstein was like the offensive line tonight on a big running game. Yeah, the running backs can get the credit for rushing for 150 yards, but without Hartenstein, without a good offensive line, it was nothing, right? Without Hartenstein doing what he did to Jokic physically, nothing even close to this production level for the Thunder's defense. So Hartenstein, big kudos to him. Chet Holmgren, I thought this was his best game since returning from injury, but the box score does not say that because he got into foul trouble. 5 fouls against him. He only plays 25 minutes, and of those 25 minutes, it was bursts here and bursts there because he just could not stop fouling. And I want to give him credit for that, though. And that sounds counterintuitive because he shouldn't be fouling. He shouldn't have gotten into foul trouble, but he did, right? We all do things that we shouldn't do. We all do things that are not advantageous for our life or at our job or wherever. But how do you respond to those things? I thought Chet did a really good job of, in a game where you're in and out because of the whistle, he somehow still caught a groove and caught a rhythm and stayed with that rhythm despite playing in these bursts. So that was really impressive. What was also impressive was he's got 4 fouls on him, 5 fouls on him, but he's still contesting everything at the rim. He's still deterring shots. He got 4 blocks to show for it, but he had even more shots that he altered and forced misses on at the rim. And those are dangerous plays in the sense of when you have 4 and 5 fouls, any leap, even if it's no fault of your own, could be a foul, could be the end of your night. And the way that he's able to compartmentalize the foul trouble, still perform on the defensive end, was big for the Thunder, and it was big for the end result. And then offensively, I mean, the spin through the lane slam where he is like going to pop a blood vessel screaming into the crowd. I mean, that's nostalgic. I mean, that's a clip that, like, when your kids 20 years from now are making TikToks reminiscing on the good old days, that play will be in that montage. So, I just think that Chet had a really good game, and I think that J-Dub showed the mental fortitude it takes to be a part of a championship team and a leader on a championship team. And I said it to say this. Look, he had 6 points at halftime. 6 points. At halftime, Stephen A. Smith apparently was calling out J-Dub. And, J-Dub was not good enough in the first half. He just wasn't. He knows that. And here's another example and an illustration of why I think this team is different. Why I think that I'm comfortable now coming around to the expectation level placed on them is because these aren't normal second year guys, right? It's second year in the sense of second year having expectation, second year going to the playoffs. These aren't normal guys going through their second go around. They're very advanced players. They're very advanced in their mindset. They're very mature. Jada's been a guy who has been under the microscope and has been picked apart in big spots, in big games. And he has had a lot of shortcomings at times in bigger moments. Think back to that Dallas series offensively. He was really good defensively, but not good offensively in that Dallas series. You think back to some of the national TV games where he left some to be desired. Even that Minnesota game where you were down all your bigs, but still he had 0 shot attempts in overtime, and he just wasn't good enough in the fourth quarter. Like he's had moments where he has not been great. And that's a testament to him today, because 6 points at halftime, those thoughts can creep into your head. Those things can make you spiral. But that's not the player J-Dub is. That's a very small sample size. We have a much larger sample size of J-Dub being a very good basketball player. And his ability to snap and clear that 6 point first half, which was not good enough, and parlay it into what his night ended up becoming, which was 26 points. So he scored 20 points in the second half. 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals on a block. Ultra aggressive offensively. Setting up his teammates for quality looks. Defending his butt off every possession. And a career high 11 free throw attempts, which shows you an example of how he got downhill, how he took on contact, how he finished at the rim, and how he put up these numbers. Like that maturity to get over it in intermission and come back out with the adjustments and ready to go is big. And you're going to need that because everything's not going to go your way in the playoffs. You're not going to, from the opening tip-off, go wire to wire and win games in the playoffs. But how do you deal with these situations? I think this Thunder team handles it better than any young team in the history of the league's ever handled it. And that's top to bottom. That's Shai all the way down to their last rotational player. And so Shai was a big part of this game. And Shai deserves a lot of credit. But this was also a team win. A win that should, again, as we said at the first segment, wipe away your reservations of if this team can do it. This team can do it. This team should do it, frankly. Jada a plus 17, Chet a plus 32. You're a plus 12 in the J-Will minutes, plus 11 in the Kaysen minutes, plus 11 in the Caruso minutes, plus 11 in the Wiggins minutes. And the fact that this Thunder team took on a stretch where you're up 3 entering the fourth quarter, taking on Jokic without Shai on the floor, and Shai gets the ability to return to the court with a 10-point lead and put this game away and drive the dagger through the heart of Denver. That is what we're talking about when we talk about how this secondary unit is good enough to not just stay afloat, but at times extend. And if this secondary unit can extend, as they did tonight greatly against Jokic, it's over for you. It's over for you. And so, for as much as we can get caught up in the big stuff, it does at times come down to stuff like bench points, where it's like, yeah, I mean, the Thunder bench dominated Denver's bench, and then their superstar took over and won them the game going away. Ran them out of the gym. So they get to do it again on Monday, second night of back-to-back. It's never as good as your first, so we'll see what the second night has in store for us. But what a christening moment for this Thunder team. Let me know what you think about this game down below. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.